Hey folks, welcome back. Another CloudFormation Wednesday here. We're going to pick up where we left off last week and see if we can finish up our VPC. So I've redeployed it. And if we go over to the VPC console, just refresh our memory on what we created. So here's our VPC, ends in 592. We've got a number of subnets. So we've created 2 public subnets, 2 private subnets, 2 protected subnets, and we've spread them across multiple availability zones. And we're going to do this because we want to build a solution. Whatever we put inside this VPC, we want it to be across multiple availability zones in this particular region. So that's why we do that. Okay. So that's kind of, I think, as far as we made it. We've got our route tables. Oh, we didn't get to the route tables. So let's create route tables. We're going to create an individual route table for each of the subnets. So let's go over here and kind of see where we are in our template. All right. So there are public subnets, private subnets, protected subnets. I'm just going to do this so we can keep this straight later. And then let's create our route tables. And then once we're done our route tables, we have to do our route table association. The other thing we need, so we've got our VPC, we've got our internet gateway, we've associated the internet gateway to the VPC. Because this is public, we do need, let's make it here, do it under here. NAT gateways, right? So let's work through these 3 things first: NAT gateway, route tables, and then associating the route tables. And where is my, let's go over to our CloudFormation documentation and figure out how we build. There we go. I don't know what I did there. What I was trying to show you was that. There we go. Okay. So this is the instructions on how to create a NAT gateway. So our NAT gateway is relatively easy. We need to put the NAT gateways in our public subnets, and we need to allocate an elastic IP address to these NAT gateways because they're going to have the public IPs, right? We're going to route traffic through these to get to the internet. Right, and this is the elastic IP. So I think what we'll do first, I'm just going to make myself a note here. Okay. So really what we need is to find an elastic IP here first. Come on. All right, well, while we're waiting for the documentation to hopefully load, all right, let's try this again. CloudFormation, elastic IP. I'm not sure why the doc page isn't loading. Okay, there we go. So this is a relatively easy couple pieces of code. So we need 2 elastic IPs. We need one for each of our NAT gateways. Okay, so you can see I've kind of set this up. We'll do EIP0. The type is and let's see here. We're gonna create a domain which is VPC. Do we need anything else? No, that's it. Let's see. Actually, it's not even required. We'll leave it there. And then we'll just add the tags. So I'll just borrow tags from here so that we have the same tagging structure for everything. We'll remove the name. We'll leave this the same. So now we need two of these. Okay. That seems too easy almost. Here, let me just show you the properties that I'm looking at. All right, so here's the domain, which we basically specify if we want to use EC2 Classic, which is the default, or we want to use VPC. So we want this to be associated to our VPC. So that's fine. Instance ID. So this is how we're going to associate the Elastic IP to the instance ID. We actually do that in the NAC gateway config, so we don't need to worry about that. A set of unique availability zones. Yeah, we don't need that. And then public IP v4. We don't have an address pool, so we don't worry about that. And then tags. So yeah, that's pretty easy. Okay. Now, if we find our NAC gateway again, here's our NAC gateway. Just get that back to the YAML. The allocation ID is how we refer to the Elastic IP address, so that's easy. Connectivity type, public or private. The default is public, so we don't need to worry about that. This will be interesting because we need to assign this into our two public subnets, so that's fine, and then tags. So these are two easy resources to create. So let's go back over to the editor, and we're just going to say, we'll just call it NAT gateway 0. We're going to get the type definition here, which we want to make sure we're going to use the depends on attribute here. We want to make sure that the Elastic IP is there first. And then we're going to say allocation ID and ref EIP0. Activity type we don't need to worry about. We should also do this because we are going to tie it to subnet, which I think we just called, where is it here? A public subnet 0. So we want that to also exist before we try to deploy this. So then we're just going to say subnet ID ref subnet 0, and then we'll continue to do this. And like I said, we need two of these. We want to put one in each of the public subnets. Okay. So that should be good. Why don't we do this in stages? Because all this feels too easy. So we're gonna set all these up first. So let's do this. Okay. Push that. Where's my pipeline? I'll just load this up. Okay. Look at that, failed immediately. So probably got a spelling mistake. Let's see what I did wrong. Subnet 1 in the resource block. What did I do? Template, unresolved resource name subnet 1. Oh, yeah, here, I'll show you what I did. See these? These aren't subnet, it's public subnet 0 and public subnet 1. That's a little better. At least it made through the validation. So if we go back over here, we find change sets. There's our change set and a bunch of additions, right? So 2 elastic IPs, 2 NAT gateways. Let's see how we do. All right, didn't fail immediately. That's good. Always a good sign. Go over here. No NAT gateways yet. Still setting up our elastic IP addresses. The elastic IP is malformed. I can tell you that I have never seen that before. Oh, I think I know what he did. I think in the template, we have to refer to the allocation ID. I just did a ref to it, which is obviously sending us back the IP address, which isn't what we need. I should have checked that, but figured I'd get lucky. So if we go over here and we look at the return values, I just did a ref, which returns the elastic IP. Not what we need. What we actually need is the allocation ID. So I'll show you what we need to change. We go over here, see what I did? So we came back to get attribute and say EIP1.allocation ID is what it's after. Okay, so this is an intrinsic function called get attribute. And we can do the same thing up here and change it to that. Okay, because we're not passing the IP, we're passing whatever the allocation ID is. So let's just actually read the doc for that and see what it says. It says the ID that AWS assigns to represent the allocation of the address for use within your VPC. This is returned only for VPC elastic IPs. For example, there we go. So it's basically a reference to it, I guess. All right, so let's repush our change. And hopefully that's the only fix that we need. Okay. Pipeline will run. That's good. And it'll generate a new change set for us. So we're using change sets here because change sets are a great way to effectively, they're like dry runs. So it might be a little overkill in, see this, it's still in cleanup and progress. This is probably going to fail. We might have to give it a little longer. But a change set is a way to, well, it's like a dry run, like I said. So it's a way for us to see the potential effects of updating the resources in the stack before we actually do it. It's a great way in a production environment, or even really anything other than a demo environment like this, to just make sure you understand what the potential outcome of your change is before doing it. Because with CloudFormation, depending on the attributes that you change, you can actually, what CloudFormation would do is delete the resource, right? It's going to create a new one, then delete the old one. And you can imagine that in some cases, that's probably not what you want. So this provides us with a way to have a look at what the changes are and then make sure we're okay with those changes. So this is fine now, but our pipeline probably failed. Yeah, see here? And it would have failed because, I'll show you the error message. All right. It's in a different state. So we can't make an update or generate a change on this because it's not in like kind of a steady state, if you want to call it that. So I'm just going to rerun the pipeline. And that should fix it for us. And if everything goes well, there we go. Now we've got our change set. All right, so if we look at this again, see what I mean? This is what we're seeing. So it's telling us it's adding new resources. These are the logical ideas that we defined in the template. And the most important column here is really replacement. It's going to say true, false, or conditional. So you can imagine, like in a production environment, if you're making a change like this, you probably don't want to see replacement equals true. So this is why we use change sets. So I'm going to execute the change set now. And that's actually going to run the update on the stack. Hopefully this time I'm making the right references and it works. Okay, so we got our EIPs, our elastic IP addresses. Here come our gateways. Well, if I go over here and we refresh this view, there we go. Okay, so these are our two NAT gateways. They're coming to life. And then, does it show us at the top? It doesn't. But if I select one of these, it hasn't associated the elastic IP to it yet. But if I go over to the EC2 console and go to elastic IPs, there's our two IPs. Okay. So this looks good. I'm hoping it's fine now. I would think it was going to fail by now, if it were going to fail. So we'll leave that and let it run. And then in the meantime, what we can do is create a route table for each of our subnets. So we're going to create 6 route tables and then associate those route tables to particular subnets. So flip back over here. So there's our EIPs, our 2 NAT gateways, and then this is what we want. So we're just going to go like this: public route table 0. I need to look these up. I can never remember them. Okay. So again, these are easy. We're going to create a route table and we're going to associate it to the VPC. That's all we're going to do. Okay. So we're going to say so we'll say VPC ID. In this case, we're going to say ref VPC. What did we call it? Just VPC 0. And then we'll continue our tagging strategy and we will borrow from these. And in this case, we're going to say public. How do I want to do this? I think we'll just go like this. Actually, maybe we'll just put it at the end. So we'll do this. We'll just say RT for route table. We'll have a look at the name. We can always change the names after the fact. So we need 6 of these. This becomes route table 1. And then we're just going to change these to match. We need private route table 0. Be easy. I'm trying to check protected. There we go. All right, so there's our route tables. And then, assuming that all of these work, what we need to do is associate the route table with the appropriate subnet. And that's just route, I think it's route table. Oh, it's subnet route table association. Again, this is a really simple ID to set up. So I'm just going to go like this. Okay. And we'll just do this. What are we going to call these? Let's do public association 0, I guess. The way we've done it. And what we need is the route table ID. which we're going to say ref public route table 0. And the subnet ID, which we already know is just, in this case, public subnet 0. And I'm going to put a depends on statement in here again. So if you're building this out from scratch, we're just controlling the order. Oh, it keeps adding that dash today. Oh, we want public subnet, right? Like that. So these are pretty basic as well, so we can just cut and paste a bunch of these. Become private. All right, assuming that I did, oh, I need one more. I almost feel like this should almost be in a different stack, like just to make this a little easier to manage, because we're already up to 400 lines. Well, I'll tell you what, let's deploy it. Okay, let's see what happens. I'm sure I have spelling mistakes, so we can clean those up first. Let's see how this goes. While we're waiting, let's make sure this actually deployed. Yeah, okay, great, it did. Okay, well, we made it through validation, so no obvious spelling mistakes. Go back over here, change that. Okay, it's generating the change set. And we should see a bunch of additions, right? So these are our route tables. So let's make sure we've got them all here. Oh, it's actually 2 pages. Can we, man, we can't see more. So there's the 2 public route tables. There's our 2 private route tables, and there's our 2 protected route tables, and then we've got all the associations. So this is where we find out if there's any spelling mistakes in the attributes themselves. Okay, so there's all the tables created. And there's the associations. Okay, so great. We got all that cut and paste done. If we go back over here now and we go to our VPC console, we filter this here. Here's our subnets. Okay. Now what we should have is individual route tables for each of these. Now they're all going to look the same because by default, the only thing we have in a route table is a local route, which would allow resources to see the resources, other resources within the VPC. So each of these should have, we've got what, 6 subnets. So if we go here, yeah, we have 7 route tables because when you create a VPC, it has a default route table. We don't want to use the default route table because we want that granular control of how routing will work. And the way I can make sure that this is all set up properly is I should just go to subnet associations and I should see none. So that's great. That's done. But I do think that it might be easier go back over here and see we've got a VPC template. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go File? We'll call this VPC routing. And this is, again, a little bit of overkill for what we're doing here, but it makes it a little easier to read in the end. So we can do this. So there's our deploy statement for the VPC. And what we can do now is I'm thinking like we leave the NAT gateways and everything here, but all of this we put into a new template. So actually, I'm just going to go and we'll just clean it up. So we really don't need any of these. And everything until we get here will go away. Now what we need to change, we don't need our condition anymore. Our outputs are going to change, but we will have a bunch of outputs. So what we need to do now is we're going to create what's called a cross-stack reference. So the output from the VPC template will become input for this. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to do this. I'll just say VPC stack. Now, see all these references? We need to change these because we can't refer to the VPC ID anymore. We have to basically get the export value from the other one. These we don't have to change. We do because, yeah, okay. So these, we can't depend on something that's in another template. So we'll delete that. Each of these associations. And we don't have depends on up here. So what we want to do is we want to use, and this I'm going to have to look up. I'll show you what we want to use, but I have the structure of this somewhere and my brain never remembers this. So if I do import, I think it's import value. So it's a different intrinsic function. Yeah. This is what we want to use. And essentially this is, see here, this is the export, and then we can refer to that value. So this is an example of an export from stack A, and then we can refer to that in the other template. So this is stack B. But I have a different way to write this. I don't like the 2-line thing. I just have to find it. Give me 1 second. You'd think by now my brain would remember the syntax of a couple of these things, but it does not. Yeah, and I found it quickly, so I'll show you here. Okay, so if we go back over here, what we want to do is we want to change that, and we want to say refer to the VPC stack, and then what did we call the output? So if I go back over here, we want to just go like this. Okay. So we can just quickly do all these. So all of our route tables are now updated, right? And then we have to do something similar, but you know what? We don't have outputs defined for the subnets. So let's just shrink these all up. So what we need to do actually is we need to go here and we need to add some additional stuff. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to create public subnet 0 ID. The value, we'll check these, but I think it's just like this. So we'll just go public subnet 0 like that. Okay, so let's just check the syntax of these. And the way that you find those is in the CloudFormation documentation. If you go to subnet, return values, we want the ID, so it's just a ref. Okay, so we're referencing here, we're referencing the logical ID, which returns the ID of the subnet, and that's what we want. Okay. So if we go back over here, what we have to do, you know what we're going to do, right? We're just going to go like this. Need all these export values so that we can use them as import values in the other stack. So that's how a cross-reference stack works. No, sorry, cross-stack reference. There we go. I could do a search and replace here, but I don't know. I'd probably spend more time trying to figure that out than just quickly cutting and pasting. So now we've got the additional export values. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove all of these from that stack, because now we're going to deploy them in the other stack, right? So that's all the export values we need. We can go back over here now and change all of these. So you can imagine how this is going to work. We're going to go like this. And we're just going to say public subnet. I think that's what we called it. Yeah, dash ID. Okay. And we're just going to replace all these guys. Oops, I'm doing that wrong, aren't I? Okay, so we'll borrow these. Put them down here. Private. There we go. And I'm going to leave outputs out for now. Let's just see if this works. So we're actually going to have a fair amount of changes here, because when we deploy this, what's going to happen is in the original VPC template, the subnet, the route tables and the route table associations will be deleted. And then we will deploy this template, which will reestablish the route tables and the route table associations. So let's see how this works. Oh, I got to actually update this. So we'll just call this. All of these can go away, but we do need what I'm going to say is VPC stack, and we know that that is just this. Okay. And then the parameter overrides, we need those. All of these can go away, and we just say VPC stack equals VPC stack. The reason we're doing that is because of the way we're constructing the import values, right? If we go back here and look at this, we're basically saying import a value, and we're dynamically creating the export ID. So we need the stack name and then whatever we called it. So let's see if we get lucky on this one. So what did we do? We're going to This one, I won't be surprised if we get some validation errors. Oh, look at that, it worked. Let's see what the deploy looks like. We should have 2 deploys now, right? So there's our VPC deploy, and there's our routing deploy. The other thing that I could do is in the CI script, like I know this will work okay the way that we want, the way that it's set up now, because we've already deployed those other templates. But if you're deploying this from scratch, what we could do is we could say, thinking here, the needs statement. So we can say needs job VPC deploy. So this way we're basically relating these together. Oh, our routing deploy failed, which is okay actually, because now I'll show you, if I go back over to the here, we can see what this error is, fix this, and then I'll show you what the CI change did. An error occurred when calling protected subnet present. No. They must have value. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, I see what I did. Look what I did. Copied and pasted this and didn't change the YAML file. How what we called it? VPC-routing. Now we should have 2 failed pipelines now because the second one, yeah. So now if you go in here, if you go to job and you go to job dependencies, so we can see now how these are related together, right? So the routing deploy job depends now on the VPC deploy job, which means we'll run this one first and then run this one. And this is actually, it won't really make much of a difference in this CI stack, but if you had a lot, or in this CI job, if you had a lot of stacks in here, you can actually get some improvements in the speed by using this idea of the needs statement. So again, what did we miss? Oh, project. So I must have, what's that saying? When calling the trait change that parameters, project must have values. So what did I miss? Okay, project, that's fine. Project. Oh, I put it in the tags for the stack, but I didn't put it here, which, did I do that up here? Oh yeah, I did. I just, yeah, cut it off. Okay, so hopefully that fixes it now. If we go back over to our pipeline. And let's see what this does. Nothing like watching a pipeline run. And this is a small one. It always feels like it takes longer when you're watching it. There we go. Okay, so we got our change set created. So if we go back over here now, okay, we need to run the update on this one first though. So what this is going to do is delete a bunch of resources, but it's also going to add the outputs that we need that become the inputs for the other templates. So you can see it's making a lot of changes. So let's execute this one, and it's going to delete a bunch of resources. Basically, all the route tables and all the route table associations should go away here. And see this here, I'll show you. See, we've got our VPC outputs and then the IDs for all of our subnets. What should happen when this is done, we should see also IDs for all of the route. No, maybe this is what we would see. I think before we only had the VPC ID and then these ones are the new ones. So it's already added those. Okay, so that's perfect. If we go look at our VPC now and we go back to the subnets and just refresh this. Oh, sorry, not the subnets, the route tables. We should be back to 1, right? Just the main route table, because we just deleted all of our route tables. Now, in this case, we should see all those route tables and the associations come back. And our input here is kind of what we're passing in. There's the VPC stack reference. So hopefully what that should do is take the outputs from the VPC stack and make them inputs in this stack, which hopefully, if we've done this right, should result in all of our route tables coming back. That's a pretty good sign. So let's see here. There we go. Okay, route tables are all created, and then the associations. In theory. Okay, it says completed over there, I guess, yeah. So if I go back here now, refresh this, we've got 7 route tables again, one route table for each subnet. Okay. So now the next thing is we need to set up the routes for each of our subnets. So what I'm thinking here is public subnets route, their default route points to the internet gateway. Private subnets, their default routes point to the appropriate NAT gateways, and our protected subnets, the idea here is that those protected subnets can only communicate with resources within the VPC. So we'll just leave those protected subnet route tables with the default route only, which is like this, right? So we can see things in the VPC, and that's it. So we're going to need to add 4 routes, right? One to each of the public and private subnets that we've created. Okay, so let's do that. And let's see, how big is this file? This isn't too bad. I think we'll leave it in here. So let's do this. Routes, and we'll break it down. We'll say public routes, private routes. Private routes, there we go. So we're going to say public route 0, and just figure out what we need to create for this. Here it is, route. There is a lot of options here, but our setup is really simple. So we're going to do a destination CIDR block, and then we're going to use the appropriate gateway. Okay, so in our case, we're talking about public route tables. So if I go back over here, we're going to say so destination CIDR block. We're going to make this the any route or the default route. And we are going to use, which thing do we need? We need gateway ID, which is the ID of the internet gateway or the virtual private gateway attached to your VPC. So we're going to do gateway ID, and then we're going to do the ever popular to do. Okay, because we're going to need to do another import here to use this. Now, actually, let's just create the two placeholders for the 2 routes. Actually, not done. Right, we need to associate this to a subnet as well. Not a subnet, sorry, a route table. So we can do this. Route table ID. That's also a to do. So we need to create some more outputs in our main VPC table. So why don't we do, actually, let's do the VPC table first to make sure we get all of our outputs done. So again, we're just going to shrink these down. Oh, these aren't actually. The route tables are in this document. So we can say ref public route table 0. And then we're going to say depends on public route table 0. That does that, but we do need the gateway ID. So this is the ID for the internet gateway. So we can find that way up here. I'm sure there's a keyboard shortcut for this too, but I don't know what it is. We need that. So the first thing is we need to understand what return values this supports. And again, we can find that in the CloudFormation documentation. So we'll go back over here and we're looking for EC2 Internet Gateway. Yeah, again, it's just a ref. So we can add this down here. We'll do this. Whoops, not that. Okay. We'll say IGW 0 ID. Now we're going to need to do the same for our NAT gateways too. Oh, sorry, I didn't switch the screen there. I just added, I'll show you what I did. I just added this new output, right? So the logical ID for the internet gateway. And what I was saying is we also am going to need this for the NAT gateways. Okay, so let's figure out first what it expects for the NAT gateways. I'm sure it's just a reference to the logical ID again, but we'll just double check. So we need to find EC2 route. Okay, we'll change this back here. NAT gateway ID. So it's the ID of the NAT gateway. That's easy. And then we can find NAT gateway. We look at the return values. And again, it's just a ref. So this, that returns the resource name. So we need a get attribute, right? Because we want the ID, not the resource name. So if we go back over here, go back to our VPC, and we'll go like this. All these, right here, NAT gateway 0. So we'll use the get attribute call here. And we'll say NAT gateway 0 dot NAT gateway ID. It's like that. So we've added those additional outputs that we now can refer to over here. So here we can just do exactly what we did up here. Since we're referring to the same stack, we can use this import value. And this is, this is the internet gateway. So IGW 0, I think we called it, dash ID. Let's just double check. I forget already. Oh, it's just IG 0. Yeah, or IGW like that. We can't have more than one, but look at that. Okay, so I've got the reference there. That makes sense. I really didn't need to say that was 0 because in Internet Gateway, it's a one-to-one relationship with a VPC. So it's not like I can ever have more than one Internet Gateway, but we're in it now. So we'll just leave it like that. Okay, and we can take that same value and copy it into both of these because we want both the public subnets to refer to the Internet Gateway as the destination essentially for this. If you're trying to get anywhere other than the VPC, go talk to the Internet Gateway. Okay. And now we need to do the same thing for our private routes. And we'll do type we can pretty much we can do, well, we'll just cut and paste this, but we'll just make the changes. Oops. Oh boy. There we go. Right. So the destination IP address is still 0 because we're saying from a private subnet, if you're trying to get anywhere other than the VPC, I want to route the traffic to the NAT gateway. Okay. So we do need to change the rest of this. So we're talking about routes. So it becomes NAT gateway ID. And this becomes NAT gateway 0 because we want to associate this with private route table 0. And now we can cut and paste this. So now we've got our routes for each of our private subnets and public subnets. So that's good. Let's see how we do here. Okay, validation is good. So we have to remember to rerun the update on the VPC stack because we've added more outputs. Let's go over and see if it's done. Oh. Oh, not that one. I almost did the wrong thing. Now, this is going to look empty because we're only updating the outputs. Right? We're not actually changing any resources. So we can run this, and it will basically say update in progress. There we go. We're done. And if we look at the outputs now, there we go. There's the internet gateway, the 2 IDs for the NAT gateways that we need. Now, if we go over here, right, we're going to create our 4 routes, right? Let's see how we did here. Route tables. So we should see changes here. Here we go, right? So now we're saying local route to talk to anything on the within the VPC, and then trying to get out to the internet. Both private subnets should be the same, the different NAT gateways. Right? And then our protected subnets shouldn't change because we want to keep them in the VPC. And then we've got our 2 public subnets, which point there. Okay, perfect. So now we've got our VPC connected to the outside world. We've got our 6 subnets, so 3 in each availability zone. And we've updated the route tables, and we've deployed NAT gateways. So private instances can get internet connection indirectly. They can communicate to the internet through the NAT gateways, which then route the traffic through the internet gateway to the outside world. So we're good there. I think what we'll do is we want to add, there's a feature here called the flow log. And this is a really great, potentially auditing tool for your environment. So it's going to, depending on how you set it up, it will log all traffic flowing in and flowing out of your VPC. Okay? It can do the entire VPC or a subset of the VPC, and it can push traffic to CloudWatch logs or an S3 bucket. Can't do both at the same time. So if you wanted to push it to both of those locations, you'd actually need 2 flow logs. I think what we'll do today is we will just set up a flow log that dumps all of our traffic for the entire VPC into a CloudWatch log group. So let's do that. I'm going to put that in another template, and we'll just call it VPC flow logs. And we're going to just grab all of this, even though we're not going to need almost any of it. I shouldn't have done that one. I should have done this one. So we need our environment tags. This actually looks pretty good. Those would be the same tags I think we're going to need for our VPC flow log config. All of this can go away though. Okay. So let's figure out what we need. We need 2 pieces for this. First, we need our CloudWatch log group, and then we need our actual VPC flow log. So let's see if we can figure this piece out. Oh, sorry. I got to get used to this new stream setup. I'll show you what I did. Blah. Okay. We basically just created this skeleton piece of code here. And this will be the template we use to deploy another stack, which is going to have just our flow log configs in it. Okay. Sorry about that. And what we want to do now is we want to go over here, here, and we want to look for CloudWatch logs. This is what we're after. And what we want to do is create a log group. Okay. So we have to think about protecting our log data at rest. Now, if I recall, see this here? Log group data is always encrypted in CloudWatch logs. If you omit this key, the encryption does not use KMS. It does not use KMS? Let's have a quick look at that. By default, CloudWatch logs use server-side encryption. Oh, I see what they mean. So this would be the same as, like, if you have an S3 bucket and you have server-side encryption on the S3 bucket. Or, sorry, let me try that again. Server-side encryption using S3. So it's the service itself, in this case, S3, that's doing the encryption, right? I think that's what they're saying here about CloudWatch logs. An alternative is you can connect CloudWatch logs to the key management service, KMS, right? And then that way you're using the KMS service to do that work for you. Encryption using KMS is enabled at the log group level by associating a key with a log group, either when you create the log group or after it exists. So we can add that later. I like to use customer managed keys for this because it gives us more flexibility. So maybe what we'll do, I know this isn't directly VPC related, but we're starting to get a lot of templates here. So let's do this. We're going to do networking, VPC, and we'll move all of these over here. We're going to have to change our CI scripts. Maybe, it wasn't smart enough. So now we're going to go like this. We're going to say networking / VPC. Change all these paths now. Woo. Okay. What I was thinking is we could do, what would we put? Oh, CloudWatch logs. Here's how I usually organize this. I line it up with the solution categories if you click, oh, there we go. So how did I do that? There we go. Under products, right? And then see how they've logically organized everything? I would assume what I'm looking for is CloudWatch logs. It's kind of just the way that I started doing this, and I kind of like it, but I don't know where this would be. Management and governance. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go like this. Directory, we'll just say MGMT. Under here, oh, sorry, I'm getting confused about what we're doing. Let's delete that. Okay, and really what I'm doing, I keep forgetting to switch the screens. I need a better system for this. So what I was showing, thought I was showing is this. See how you go on the products and you've got these categorizations. So what I normally do is in my structure of my projects, I find kind of the category and then what's under the category. So what I'm actually doing is I'm going to create a KMS key that we'll use to encrypt our CloudWatch log data. And you can see the KMS key is under security, identity, and compliance. So what I'll do is I'll just go like this. Okay. And then under the security folder, we'll create KMS.yaml. We'll do the same thing. I'm just going to grab this. These can stay the same. Now we need our, we'll just call it KMS. We'll just call it key. I don't like that. We'll call it okay, it's KMS key. So let's figure out what we need to do for this. Creating the KMS key is easy, but with a KMS key, it requires a resource policy called key policy. So we'll just have to make sure we have the right permissions in the key policy so that the CloudWatch log service can actually use the KMS key for cryptographic operations, right? Encryption and decryption on the log files themselves. So it's not too bad. Again, where would KMS be? I know it always seems alphabetical until it isn't. Some things are Amazon, some things are AWS, some things don't have anything in front of it. There it is, way at the bottom. So what we want to do is we want to create a key. And it's relatively simple, so let's build this out. So let's say description. We'll say CMK for CloudFormation Wednesdays. Is it enabled? It is. This is another reason why you might want to consider this. You can enable key rotation on this. So what will happen is every 12 months, the KMS service will rotate the key on your behalf. Now, this is where it's going to get not tricky, but we're going to define our key policy. And we're just going to go like that for now. Okay. And the key usage, we need to define what this key can be used for. In this case, I can't remember what the name is. Not key spec, key usage. Oh yeah, it's, I should have been able to remember this. It's just that. Makes perfect sense, right? We want to use it for encryption and decryption operations. It's not multi-region. Okay, and then we've got pending window in days. Okay. I'm going to put this as a variable. Add this up here. Just make sure we know what this is going to be. It's an integer. So I think we just do this. Okay. And What this is if you delete a KMS key, a customer managed KMS key, this is kind of like, think of it as like a cooling off period. Because you can imagine if you accidentally deleted a key and that key was being used by something, then you've effectively just made those services that were encrypted with that key no longer accessible. So this idea of pending window in days, it's weirdly named, but anyways, it means that if I was to delete this today, right, I have 7 days before the key will actually be deleted. So that's why I call it the cooling off period. Okay, so that's what that is. The minimum number is 7, the maximum is 30, and then we're going to set up our tags. And you can imagine what we're going to do here. We're going to borrow tags from over here. Where was I? Here. Okay. Ugh, it's ugly. We don't need a name, but we'll leave all these other tags the same. Great. So that's essentially it, but we need to set up the key policy. And for that, I need to find a little example for the basic structure, which there probably is one in the documentation. So let me just have a quick look. There isn't. How do they do this without giving you an example of a key policy? That seems... it's required, so you would think they'd give you an example of that. And the reason I just need to jog my memory on it is... oh, maybe that's me. Hold on. I might be looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, okay. User error. I was looking at the wrong place. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. So back in the key, if you go to examples, see down here, key policy. Okay. So this is what we need to build. So we're going to do this. And for now, what we're going to do is we're going to just give the CloudWatch logs service access to this. We won't make it too fancy. So we're going to say version. This is always the same for any resource policy or any identity policy. And then we're going to say statement. And we're going to say effect. We're going to use another intrinsic function. And here we're going to say, so that'll dynamically fill that in for us, right? The 12-digit account ID. Sorry, I mixed my keyboard map up again. There we go. Action in this case is KMS star. I don't know what that extra dash is for. I'm doing that all day today. Okay. All KMS keys. This is essentially what this is doing is enabling the use of IAM permissions on this key. Okay, so you're going to always want that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, now this is not going to be, a perfect key policy, but we're going to, I'm going to follow the example here, and we're going to say, what we're doing here is we're going to provide access to a particular, in this case, role within this account to provide administration functions on the key. And I'm just going to grab the role. Just bear with me a sec here. So I need the ARN for the role. Okay. So this is the SSO administrative access that I'm using to get into this account. So we're just going to do some subbing here. This we can do. Okay, so that's that. And there's a list here of the actions that we want. You know, this is overkill for what we're doing. Let's just do it like this instead. We're going to say service. This is how we're going to give CloudWatch logs access to this key. And we'll use the sub command again. We'll say logs dot. And that's a pain. Just going to be adding the dash. I don't know what I've done here. We'll clean up all the dashes at the end. Essentially, we're providing the log service with these actions. And we're going to put a condition here. The condition is ARN equals. I'm going to cut and paste this one. Actually, let's cut and paste the whole thing. No, it's got some quotes I don't want. So we'll do this. Okay, logs, and then we're going to put in pseudo parameters here. So this was region. Log group, and then we're gonna essentially give this key access to all of the log groups in our environment. Okay, because you can think if you were building an application here, you might have a key, a CMK like this, that you're going to use for all of the different components associated to this particular application. So you could maybe tie this down a bit and say CFN. Let's try this actually. CFN dash Wednesday dash star like that. Okay, so as long as we're going to prefix our log group with this, then this key has access to run cryptographic operations on that environment or on that log group. So that's our key. Okay, we could create an alias for this. An alias is just an easier way. Let's create an alias. Yeah. Okay, so we'll say key alias. Oh, look what I did up here. I'm just noticing it now. Put a type definition here. That's not going to work. Let's try this again. So type is properties, and then oops, all of this can go in one. That's better. Oh, I didn't get it all, did I? Hold on. All of this. Okay. So now we have KMS. And this is just going to be a way that's easier to refer to this key if we wanted to. And this is an easy one. We just say depends on, what do we call it? KMS key. Let's do the same thing. Let's do KMS alias instead, so they follow the same thing. KMS key. Here's our handy dash, properties, alias name. We're going to come back to this one. I don't need a dash there. This dash is throwing me for a loop. And then we'll say target key ID, and here we just refer to KMS key. Now the alias, it has to be, you can make it whatever you want, but it has to start with alias. So we're going to do this. Sub alias slash. Okay, hold on a second. The alias can only contain, the alias name can contain only alphanumeric characters, forward slashes, underscores, and dashes. Aliases cannot begin with alias slash AWS. So what I was thinking we could do is we could do this. All right. See if that works. So now we've got our key defined, right? And we've added the permissions for logs, and then we've created a key alias. We are most likely going to need to refer to something in our other setup. So let's see what the return values are for the key itself. So we can return the key ID and the key ARN. So let's do that. So we're going to say KMS key ID. There we go. Okay. And we're going to do this. So it's the ID if we need it, and the ARN if we need it. All right. Let's go over here. No, I don't need almost any of this, but we'll use it anyways. Security. Name, owner, these are all the same. Parameter overrides. Do we need to override anything in here? Just this. Well, these get passed in. Okay, so yeah, we need owner email, environment, project. All the rest of this can go away. There's really nothing we need to provide to it. And all of these can also go away. And we're just going to call this CFN Wednesday-KMS. Okay, so security KMS. Let's see how we did here. Let's go back over to our pipeline. Validation is good. Oops, wrong place, sorry. So we can go over here, go to CloudFormation. So here's our new KMS key. Let's see how we do here. This does seem to take a little bit of time to generate. So as long as it doesn't fail right away, we'll give it a minute here. I think what we'll do is we'll do some multitasking. If this thing doesn't fail, give it another 30 seconds. We'll go back over to our templates and we'll have a look at what we think we need for the actual CloudWatch log. log group, I should say. So that looks pretty good. I don't think it'll fail. So let's do this. We can go back over here, find CloudWatch logs again. And really what we're doing is creating our log group, right? So let's jump back over here. And I forget what that was logically grouped as in the AWS thing. Give me a sec. I think it was it management? Management and governance? Yeah, I see CloudWatch there. So what we're going to do is we'll create that directory now. Oh. And here we'll just say CloudWatch logs.yaml. You can imagine where this is going to go. We're just going to get rid of some of these. There's too many of them. We're going to do this. Okay. Let's see what we need for our log group. Shouldn't be that bad. So we're going to need resources, and we'll call this VPC, or we'll just call it flow logs group. So KMS key ID, we're going to come back to that one. Log group name. Now this is where we have to be careful, because remember in our key ID, we said, hey, you have access to any log group that begins CFN Wednesday dash something. Now, I think all of our stacks start that way, don't they? Like our stack names, CFN Wednesday. Okay. So what we could do is we could do this. Right. That probably will work. Engine in days. We're also going to set this to do, and then we'll borrow tags. Now, we need a couple things here. So what did we call it earlier when we did our networking stuff here? Stack parameters. Okay, so we're just going to grab this. In this case, we need KMS stack, and we will borrow from this thing. I just want that import value command here. Now it's asking for the key ID. So let's just check the documentation. So it's fun. See, there's the few situations like that, like this one. So look at this in the docs, right? The name is key ID, but it's looking for the ARN. Right, so that's a little confusing. So let's just see here. To associate the key with the log group, specify the ARN. Okay, so that means then we have to be careful on what we select. So this is actually, I think we just called it key ARN, didn't we? Yeah, key ARN right there. So that's okay. Now, the other thing we need is retention in days. So by default, a log group retains logs indefinitely, but you pay for the storage and a couple other things, I think. So we obviously don't want to retain these logs forever, because you can imagine over time, well, your storage bill is going to go up. So what we want to do is figure out our retention period. The thing is, with retention in days, you can't just put an arbitrary number in there, 72. There are particular values that are allowed. So I'll show you. All right. See this list here? So I'm not going to put all of these in, right? But what I am going to do is we're going to do this. So this is an integer. So we're going to go like this. We're going to say num of days. How did we do this over here? Yeah, okay, num of days. And we're going to say type is a number. Default value is going to be 7. And then we're going to say allowed values are 1, 3, 5, 7, 14, or 30. I'm not going to put all the way up to 3,653 days. Okay, we'll just do that. So what we're doing here is we're setting the default. And if you were deploying this in the console, you'd get a little drop-down window that allowed you to select any of these other days. Since we're deploying this through the CI, it doesn't really matter, but I like to put those in because it also, even if in the CI, if you tried to put in like 8, it's not going to work. And so it's a way that we can set that up. And then we can just go here and say ref num of days. Okay. That's it for the log group, I think. Let me just make sure we've got everything. Yeah, that's it. So we'll add that to our CI. Management, CloudWatch, logs. Okay. And we'll borrow off of this because it's a bit of an easy deploy. So we'll just go call it CloudWatch. Actually, just call it logs deploy. Logs. Do we want to call it? Yeah, because we can always, what I'm thinking is, what if we needed another log group? So we could always just add other log groups here. So that's that. We do need KMS stack here because it needs the key. This also means that it relies on KMS deploy. Good there. I think we've got everything covered with that. Now let's just check. Hopefully our KMS key, I don't know why that keeps happening. Our KMS key, where'd my pointer go? Is done. Yeah, okay, so we've got our key, got our outputs. So we'll just try to deploy this now. Or I'm typing again on the other screen. We had a good run. We had a good run. What did we do wrong? Oh, it's just a typo in the path somewhere. CloudWatch logs. Do the same thing down here. No, we got it right there. Let's go back over here. Hopefully that's all that's wrong with our pipeline here. Okay, we got validation this time. All right, so see, in theory here, you can run these in parallel, so it should speed it up. We're not going to see anything here, any benefit just with these small amounts of stack deploys. So log deploy is working. If we go back over here, there's our new log. And it's just going to add the log group for flow logs. Let's see if we get lucky here and this goes on the first run. Nope. Oh, I see what I did. There's another typo. I'll show you. Remember I cut and pasted the reference here. KMS stack. What did I do wrong? Oh, see what I did? Yeah. Let's do that, right? Go here. Yeah, CFN KMS. So it's looking for an output value from the other stack that doesn't exist. So what we can do is we just delete this and I'll redeploy. And then watch our pipeline. Okay, that probably, we should see it again. There we go. So here's our change set. Let's try this again and see what it does. Okay, not an immediate fail. That's good. There's our log group. Great. So if I go over now to CloudWatch logs, we probably have a bunch of log groups in here. This is our demo account. If there are, we're going to clean a bunch out. Actually, that's not too bad. So let's do this. Delete this one we need. Let's clean these out. It doesn't matter. Okay. So here we go. We got our CFN Wednesday logs, flow logs. I don't like that, but anyways, that's what we get. And if we open this up, there's our key that we're using to protect the log data, and there's our retention. So now all we need to do is actually create the VPC flow log, which writes to this log. So we'll see if we can finish that up, and then we'll call it a night. So let's have a quick look at VPC flow logs, which I think is under EC2. Maybe. Oh, look at that. There we go. Okay. So this is what we need to create. So we'll leave that open. We've already got this. Oh, we've done this already. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say flow log, and I'm going to put a 0 on that because remember, we could potentially have multiple flow logs. So I'm just having a quick look through what we need to define here. Oh, we need an IAM role. I forgot about that. So here, I'll show you what I'm looking at. We might call it here and finish this up next week. So what we need is we need an IAM role. So what we have here is one service trying to talk to another. So we've got the flow log service trying to talk to CloudWatch logs. And for that to happen, we need to give the permission. We need to give permissions to the flow log service to write to CloudWatch logs. So that's what this is. So we need to get this set up. So that's a little more work. Yeah, I think we'll call it here, and then we'll finish this up next week and create this, which would have our full stack done. We'd have an entire. What time is? You know what? Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can do this. So let's go back over here. Be nice to get this done so we can move on to a different project. So I'm going to say IAM YAML. Okay. So what we need here is we're going to need, oh, sorry, I'm doing it again. Since I'm here, we need to just figure out the permissions for flow logs. So if we do, so probably in the documentation, tell us what to do. Okay, so we need a role that VPC flow logs can assume, and then these are the permissions assigned to that role. Easy, okay? Famous last words. Okay, so if we go back over here. We'll call this, let's just call it log IAM role. So we're going to have to define some stuff there. Actually, we'll do it this way. We'll do it log IAM permissions first. Okay. And this is going to be AWS IAM managed policy. I think that's what it is. I'll double check. So what we're doing is we're creating a customer managed policy, which will provide the permissions to the role. Okay. So let me just look this up. Again, searching for, let me show you what I'm looking at. Searching for IAM here. Okay, here we go. So this is what we want to create first. Okay. So our description here is, we'll just call this I'll show you this too. So one of the things we have to decide is, do we want to name these policies? If we don't put names in, CloudFormation generates them for us. That's how I normally do it. So I think we'll stay that way. Okay. If you put the name in here, that's fine, right? You could name it whatever you want that makes sense. I just like CloudFormation to generate them, because if you scroll down here, see this? If you specify name, you cannot perform updates that require replacement of this resource. You can perform updates that require no or some interruptions. If you must replace the resource, you got to specify a new one. So I don't really want to name it. Okay? Just in my mind, it gives us a little more flexibility. Really what we need now is the policy document. This is how we assign the permissions to this actual policy doc, or to this managed policy. And remember, we've got somewhere here. Okay, yeah, this is it. So what we need is we need a version. We saw this already. Version 12-10-17. Statement. We're just going to give it a bunch of create log group, create log stream, put log events, okay, there we go. And all of our dashes. We'll get rid of all those. And then we'll just add one back. Resource. In theory, we could tie this and say, hey, this is meant for VPC flow logs, but I did name it that, didn't I? I think what we're going to do, I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to kind of try to practice a little bit of least privilege. So see this right here? This is allowing it to create a log group. What I want to know is, I want to know what is the ARN structure that associates with these log groups. So the way you do that is, if you go IAM actions, and in this case, we're talking about CloudWatch logs. So Amazon has all this well documented. So if I can go, actions. And this will take us, I spend a lot of time in this document. I hate to admit it. So now what I can do is I could find that create log group. See this? And then it tells you what are the resource types and whether they're required or not. So a star or not. So instead of putting resource star, what I'd like to try to do is we could do this. Okay, we could take this and we'll put it here. This is going to be AWS for us because we're always working in the, I think they call it the commercial regions. And then we're going to say AWS region, AWS account ID, log group. And then we've decided already, right, that our log group is going to be called, what did we call it? This is going to be CFN Wednesdays, right? So what I'm thinking is we do this, CFN dash Wednesday dash star. Now, is it plural or not? I don't remember. Hold on. We've got our log group created already. So if we go over here, what did we end up? It's CFN Wednesday. So we could just do. So now what we're saying is we're locking this down a little more. And I can't spell. Rather than saying you can essentially do whatever you want to whatever log. I know it's not, you can't delete log groups and stuff like that, but this is the kind of stuff that you might want to consider doing when you're building these out. It does potentially make it more challenging later on, but I think it's a good habit to get into. So we're going to try this and hopefully it does what we want. So this is our policy document that provides us now with permissions to create a log group, create a log stream, put log events within a log stream, and then run describe operations. So that's good. That's what we need for that. Now we can do here, we can go depends on log IAM role. Now we need to set up our role permissions. So let me just have a quick look at what we need. The role will be pretty basic as well. The very first thing we need is the assume role policy document. And this is the trust policy. So who or what can assume this role? And that was documented in the flow logs documentation. So we can do this. And it's always going to look like that. We say effect. VPC flow logs dot. And we only need one action here, STS assume role. So STS is the security token service, right? So that's easy. Okay, we need a description. I'm actually going to put the description on the top, even though I'm figuring my OCD about alphabetical. So I'm going to say, what do we want to call this? IAM role for VPC logs. Now what we can do here is we can say managed policy ARNs, and we can just simply run a ref and say log IAM role. No. Oh, you see what I did? I'm totally doing this backwards. So this is actually AWS IAM. This is our role, right? So, did I ever mess this up? IAM role like that. This is actually our permissions. Yeah. Whoops. Manage policy like that, I think it is. I'm hoping that didn't screw it up badly. So we're going to say log IAM permissions. This is how we associate the customer manager policy now with this role. Path, permissions, boundaries, policies, role name. We're not going to name it. We're going to let CloudFormation name it. And now tagging is supported here as well. So we will find somewhere we have tags. And we'll add the tags. Now we're going to need to refer to this role in our VPC flow logs. So we are going to need some outputs. let's do this. We're going to do the same thing. If we look at the role, what return values does it give us? We can get the resource name, we can get the ARN. So let's just do the same thing. We're going to do log IAM role name. And that value is just ref log IAM role. Export. Oops. I might have to change these names. Okay, no, because we got log in there. Okay, so we're going to say log name. And then we're going to do log IAM role ARN. So there we go. That means now we can update this. Put this at the top here too. Now we need to define capabilities. And I can't remember what we need here. Let me just make sure we've got everything else here. So we've changed that. We got our stack name. Do we need to pass anything into this? I don't think we do because we've got all this. Okay. So this and this should do the trick. But what we need to do is we need to go -- capabilities. And we just need to say capability IAM. So what this is if you're deploying a CloudFormation template through the management console and you're trying to create a template, or you're trying to create a stack that inside the template you have IAM resources defined, in the console window you'll have a little button that you have to select that says you acknowledge that you're going to create IAM resources. And we're doing the same thing here. We have to provide that same basically acknowledgement, right? And there's two ways you can do it. Capability IAM, and I think the other one is capability named IAM. And we can do capability IAM because we didn't name any of the resources. We're letting CloudFormation do that. If you hard code the names, so role name, manage policy name, or was it policy name, then you would need to change this to that. Okay? But in our case, we should be able to do just this. So that's good. Let's see if we can get this to deploy now. Made a lot of changes again, so let's fingers crossed, right? There we go. Not surprising. So we've got a problem on line 70. It's probably because I was doing cutting and pasting and stuff. Oh, see what I did? Yeah, there's the bad cut and paste. You got to bring that in. Okay. I could just click through everything here looking for the pipeline. Ah, another failure. Ah, we'll get this time. Circular dependency. Oh, this is because I changed the role names, remember? Remember I had them messed up, so look at what I've done. I've said the role depends on the role. This should be log IAM permissions. So if you see a circular dependency like that, you've got basically, you're saying a resource depends on a resource, but that resource depends on the other resource. You're got a circular dependency. Makes perfect sense, right? So just repeat ourselves, which isn't it the same as a circular dependency? Not an instant fail. That's a good job, or a good sign. Let's see what happens here. Okay, there goes IAM deploy. Oh, look at that. It changed regions on us. That's weird. Okay, there we go. So here's our role and our permissions. Okay, there's our managed policy. Okay, that's probably pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave that. We're going to go back over here, and we're going to go back to, so we've got our log group now. All we need is our flow log. So we can do this. We are going to need a couple stack parameters. So we're going to probably need the IAM stack as well. Right? Exports from the IAM stack become imports to our, what's this called? Our flow log stack. And then we need to look at our flow log. What do we need to define for this? All right, so the first thing we need is what we got hung up with on the first time around, which is deliver logs permission ARN. And we're just going to mark that as to do. We're going to do the rest of this first. Now, destination options, not required, so we won't worry about that. Log destination, the destination to which the flow log data is to be published. Flow log data can be published to CloudWatch logs, log group, or an S3 bucket. So in our case, if log destination type is not specified, or CloudWatch logs specify the resource name ARN of the CloudWatch log group. Oh, I see what they're doing. Okay. So yeah, it's just alphabetical, so it feels a little weird. So we're going to say log destination to do, and then we're going to say log destination type, in our case, is cloud-watch logs. Okay. Log format we won't change. The name of a new or existing CloudWatch log group. So we're going to say log group name. We'll pull that into aggregation intervals not required. Resource ID. So this is the ID of the subnet, the VPC, or the interface. Not the interface, sorry. The subnet network interface or the VPC. So we're going to say resource ID to do. Lots of to-dos here. And we got to set, I know we're hard coding this stuff and not using parameters, but that's okay. This isn't really going to ever change. And we can use tags. Okay, so there's our tags. Oh, and we also have to define what traffic type we want it to log. So you have options. You can say log only the accepted traffic, log only the rejected traffic, or log all of the traffic. And we're going to say all. We want all the accepted and all the rejected. So that's our flow log. So we've got a bunch of things to fill in here, right? So the first thing is the deliver logs permission ARN, which is the ARN for the IAM role that permits EC2 to publish flow logs to a log group. Okay, so we need to get we need just, again, the sample here of this. You'd think I'd remember this at some point. Okay, so this is going to turn into IAM stack. And what did we call that? Dash log dash ARN. Okay. Log destination, in this case, will be the, okay, let me just show you this, what I'm looking at here. Just make sure that I'm thinking about this correctly. See here, so if the log destination is not specified, if the log destination type is not specified or is CloudWatch logs, then we need to specify the resource name of the CloudWatch log group. Okay, so we have the CloudWatch log group created already, do we? Yeah, it's up here. But we don't have any outputs. So what we need to do here, have a look at this. Oh, hang on one second. I don't know if you noticed, but I had a CloudWatch. I don't know why I'm putting my headphones on. A CloudWatch buddy behind me here, and he decided he's had enough. He's leaving. All right. So what was I saying? So oh yeah. So what we're doing here is we need to specify the ARN of the CloudWatch log group. Yeah, the log group that we want. Okay. So we can borrow from here, right? Log group name. You know what? Do we really need an output for this? Because like we've hard coded the name to flow logs. So what we could do is we could take this value right here. Okay, and if we go back to here, we could do this. Log destination is sub, and then we can pass these in again. Log group, and then it's always going to be flow logs, not glow logs, flow logs. Like that. Okay, so I think that'll do the trick. We've got our log destination. The actual log group name is not required because we're using log destination, which is the ARN. And then the resource ID is the reference to our VPC. So in this case, we can grab this VPC stack, and we just need to get the resource ID from the VPC. So we just need to look that up. It's just this VPC-ID. Right? So in theory, this should deploy a VPC flow log, which delivers to the CloudWatch log group that we created in the other template. I know this is total overkill by breaking the templates down like this. I'm sure we can consolidate some of these, but I also like the fact that, you know, we've got now small little chunks of code for the most part. I know, like, if you can imagine, if we go back to here, our original VPC, this is what, 300 lines, right? You can imagine if we had all of the routing, all of the flow logs configuration all in there, it would be a huge file, hard to manage, kind of thing. So I like this idea, but it does feel like maybe we've taken it a little too far, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. So what we need to do now is we need to go, and let's just add one of these. Yet another line, and we're going to say, what did we call it? VPC flow logs. Okay, that's our log group. So we'll do that. Actually, let's just copy this one again. Okay, so we'll call it flow logs, and we'll say flow logs. Now, what did it need? It needs a VPC stack and an IAM stack. So here we can say that now this relies on, or it needs, right, the IAM deploy to be done. And it needs, I think it's just like this, VPC deploy to also be done, like before this guy. Get rid of that. Right? There are 2 stacks. That's that one. Let's have another quick look. These all get passed in as parameters already. That's the stack there. Let's see what it does. Okay, so that's good. So far, so good. Nothing yet. Come on. Ah, so close. What did we miss? Oh, KMS stack? What did it fail on? It failed on CloudWatch logs. Did we? Oh, I bet you I know what it did. The old cut and paste. It should be VPC. C flow logs, right? Try that again. Oh. Invalid. Oh, what did I do wrong now? Another typo? Another path typo? Oh, it's no. Invalid template path. VPC dash flow logs. Oh, bah. All right. Again, path issue. So I won't make you watch changing paths. Third time's a charm. Here we go. It'll work. Come on, flow logs. All right, there's our change set. So that's a good sign. All right. So all we're trying to do is deploy a flow log. We've got our VPC stack, our IAM stack defined. Let's see what happens. There we go. Okay, so now if we go here, VPCs, here's our CloudFormation Wednesday VPC. If we go to flow logs, there's our flow log, although it didn't go to the destination we wanted, I don't think. Oh yeah, that's interesting. See that? What happened there? Destination name. It's got the right role. We must have missed something in here. Let's go back and have a look at this again. See this? We've got log destination defined, which if you go down here and look, it says here if the log destination type is not specified or is CloudWatch logs, in our case it's CloudWatch logs, specify the resource name of the CloudWatch log group. For example, right? And then we put in, we just make sure ARN, AWS logs, the region, the account ID, log group. Oh, yeah, I wasn't reading our own documentation properly or our own scripts properly. Look what I did. So our log group name isn't flow logs. It's the stack name dash flow logs. So that means it might actually be easier to create an output here. And logs, AWS logs, CloudWatch logs, where are you? Log group, return values. Yeah, so we could do this. We could do flow logs group name .arn. And we say what? Export, couldn't remember that. Name is so we'll call this, let's call it log group. It's actually ARN, so we'll do this, ARN. Change this here. Okay. Now this is the log group, which is this one. So we need to add another job here. Say, what is that called? Logs deploy. And then we'll just call this log stack is CFN. Okay, like that. And then we can go over here and go and now we can use this. Do we call it? Log group ARN. Okay, so let's try it like that instead. Okay. Oops. Oh man. There we go. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to make sure we just do this stack update on the CloudWatch log stack first, because we're going to add an output there, and that output we need that output for this, for our flow logs, right? To get the actual real flow log group name. Okay, perfect. So let's go back over here. Here's our log. Okay, again, it doesn't show anything because we're just changing the outputs. We'll say execute. Okay, that's good. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. So see this? That's a good example. That's why a change set is handy. In this case, I'm perfectly fine with it replacing the flow log, but you might look at this in a production situation or situation you're working in and say, well, we can't do that. It's not going to work. So this gives you an opportunity to check that before you actually do your update. For us, it doesn't matter. So let's see what happens. All right, and this is what you'll see. Requested update requires the creation of a new physical resource. So it'll create a new one first, right? And assuming our new flow log gets created, then it will delete the old one. Okay, there we go. So if we do the same thing and we go back here now, that looks a little more like what we were expecting. And there we go. Okay. Now we don't have anything running in here yet, so there is no network traffic flowing in or out, but we've got it all set up. So that's perfect. We made it through everything. We have a fully functioning VPC across multiple availability zones in a single AWS region. And we've built this highly available, fault-tolerant solution with some logging, right? So there we go. We'll call it here. Thanks for watching. As always, we'll be back next Wednesday with a new session of CloudFormation Wednesdays. See you soon.